Frigid wind whistles between the mountain peaks, reminding you that Siberia winter is always coming. Hello everyone, welcome back to Foster the Meeple, a channel all about board games and board gamey things. I am back again today with another pumped up Kickstarter. And today's pumped up Kickstarter preview is on Siberian Manhunt, published by Dangerous Games and designed by Jesse Iyer. And Dangerous Games very kindly sponsored today's video. So, as per usual with my preview videos, I am going to give you a little overview of how the game works. Then I'm going to help you figure out whether or not this is a good fit for you. So a few things to note in advance. Of course, this is a prototype. So, though it's pretty close to final, anything can be adjusted and changed within a prototype, so just keep that in mind. Some things could possibly change. And I think that's everything. I'm going to have all of the information that you need for Siberian Manhunt down in the description below. It's going to be launching on Kickstarter on February 11th. So if you'd like, you can go click that link below and follow along the campaign, and then you'll get notified when it goes live. All right, let's dive in. Siberian Manhunt is a two-player asymmetrical hidden movement game where one player takes the role of the fugitive, either by the name Jack Mackenzie or Aita Onisova. Please forgive any of my mispronunciations of any of the names in this game, including people and places. I'm going to mess them up for sure. They are racing across Siberia towards the border with China. The fugitive will win the game if they can either escape across the border or if they reach the end of the hidden movement track, at which point the Soviet government gives up the manhunt. The other player will take on the role of the Soviets, aka the government, attempting to track the fugitive down, winning if they either capture or kill the fugitive. But what does that mean? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a closer look at how the game plays. Now, as usual with my preview videos, this is going to be a general overview and not a full rules teach. I just want to give you an idea of how the game works and what you can expect. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Each player will have their own specific setup. So, here we have the fugitives setup. You can see they've got their own kind of well, it's a survival guide or their action sheet here. They have a campsite, they have their inventory, their character, all of their trackers, and they also have their little secret tracker. Now, typically, this little book would be behind this screen. Okay, fugitive, everything's secret. Secrets. But that is kind of their area of the board. And then on this side, we have the government. So you will see here, the government also has their kind of action guide. They have all the cards that are available to them, all of the different types of troops that they essentially have, their card deck, all of that stuff. So the fugitive player will sit to the right, the government will sit to the left. It is recommended that people sit on the same side of the table when they play this game. The fugitive is going to start the game at the U2 crash site, which is right here. The government will start at the crash site as well by placing their pawn there, which is this red pawn here. Obviously, the Fugitive doesn't have a pawn because this is a hidden movement game. So the Fugitive is sneaking all around this map. So you're not going to be able to track them with a pawn, but that is what we are using this secret notepad for. I'm going to cover how each of the factions plays, but first let's chat about a few general concepts that you're going to find in this game, starting with the landscape. Now the landscape is the map here that we have in front of us, and you'll notice that there are a ton of numbered locations, and then there's also some buildings with names. The numbered locations are in the wilderness, and all of the named locations with building icons are towns. So you'll see we have a town here, 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 anywhere that you see one of the buildings with a name. Red locations are demilitarized zones, and red army tokens cannot be placed there. Once again, we'll talk about red army tokens later, but let me move these dice. Here, you'll see these circles have red, and that means that red army tokens cannot be placed there. Once again, we'll get to those soon. The green locations here are in China. The Fugitive is trying to reach these, and the government cannot place its units here. The red road crossing the map is the main highway. So it starts right up here and it's going to stream all the way down. All of the other roads are kind of what's connecting all of the locations, but it's important to note that the red road is the highway, and each of the factions are going to have some special things that they're able to do along the highway, which I'll get to when we talk about their actions. But just know, red, highway. The last thing to note on the map are the blue dotted lines, and these are water crossings. So you'll kind of see them zigzagging through a lot of the different water spaces and the rivers and all that good stuff. Next up, we have hidden movement, which is the main mechanic in this game. The Fugitive's movements are hidden, and when they pass their locations, they will secretly record that on their secret route pad, which is this notepad over here. But the distance that they have moved is publicly recorded on the hidden movement tracker, which you can find right here down at the bottom of the board. If their location ever gets discovered, though, they will declare their specific location and move the hidden movement counter down to 0. This is not a good thing for the Fugitive, so they want to avoid this happening. The next thing is open information. Now, with the exception of the location the Fugitive moves through, all other information in this game is open to both players. That means cards will be played face up, actions are declared, etc. So everybody knows everything that is going on with the exception of the specific locations that the Fugitive is moving to. Finally, we have the Manhunt bag. That's this bag right here. It's very soft, very velvety. This represents the local population's opinions on the Fugitive and the government. Each player will have the opportunity to add tokens to the bag through different actions, which helps them to influence people to either protect the Fugitive, aka silent citizens, or help the government, aka loyal communists. So the red chips are the loyal communists, the black chips are silent citizens. There's going to be lots of different times where we're filling up this bag, and if you're curious, the bag does start with some of these tokens. You will have 6 silent citizens and 4 loyal communists to start the game in the Manhunt bag. The Fugitive and the government will take turns back and forth until one of the two have met their goal and won. Now that we understand all of that, let's start by talking about the Fugitive. The Fugitive's turn consists of 4 steps: recover energy, draw and resolve an encounter card, spend energy on actions, and record movement and adjust the hidden movement track. So let's start with step 1, which is recover energy. If the Fugitive begins their turn in the wilderness, and you'll remember that's any of these numbered locations, they will recover 1 base energy. Their energy track is up here at the top of the board, so you're just going to be moving this back and forth. There are also some items that can increase the base amount, like winter clothing as an example. If the Fugitive begins in a town, however, so remember those are the named locations with the buildings, they recover all of their energy. I will also mention during their turn, the Fugitive is also able to eat some food, which can also recover energy because food gives us energy. The amount of energy is going to depend on the type of food, so I'll show you an example. Cooked meat is going to give you 2 energy. Raw meat is going to give you 1 energy, and also parasites. Just note that the fugitive must eat 1 meal per quarter, aka every 2 rounds, or else they begin to starve and start losing health. You can track the meals that you eat up here on the fugitive's board. We're going to talk about this section a little bit later, but as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, 2 of which are in like the summer and 2 of which are in the winter. That is going to be important as we continue to explain the game. Mainly, you just don't want to starve. It's not the vibe. Step 2 is an encounter card. Now, if the fugitive is in the wilderness, they will draw a single encounter card and resolve it. These are the encounter cards right here. Pow, 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 pow. For every encounter, the fugitive will have 3 choices. They can follow the prompts of the card, ignore the card and discard it, which may require the fugitive to escape if the encounter card is aggressive. We'll talk about those keywords soon. Or they can attack the person or animal depicted. If they win the combat, they will take the penalty or bonus and can collect the encounter's items. So I think this is a good time to show you a couple examples of some encounter cards that you may encounter. Here's an encounter card. This is a simple one. Empty wilderness. Empty, nothing there. We have bears. There's also wolves. There's lots of scary stuff in here. We also have different people like the fisherwoman and the mad trapper. So lots of different types of people that you could potentially, people and things that you could potentially encounter in that encounter deck. The encounter cards also have a set of keywords which will determine the behaviors of the person or the animal that's on them. The behaviors of a person can be aggressive, neutral, or timid. And then the second keyword is going to determine whether or not that person will reveal the fugitive's location if the fugitive decides to leave, but not if they follow the encounter prompts. And those keywords are loyal, questionable, and silent. So if you take a look at these 2 previous examples, we have the mad trapper. He is aggressive and loyal. We definitely don't want to run into him. The fisherwoman is neutral and silent. So she's not so bad. There are also animal encounters, as we saw with that bear, which have their own set of symbols and will act differently than humans. They will either be predators or prey. When you encounter them, you'll roll a d6 to determine which. So if you roll a 1 to 3, wow, that was lucky, the animal's just going to flee. You don't have to worry about it. If you roll a 4 or 5, there we go. It is called a kind of distant encounter, which means that you are going to get to act before the combat begins. But if you roll a 6, you're just going straight into combat with that predator. Now on the cards, I'm not going to go too much into detail about this, but you will notice there's a heart up at the top. That's obviously their health. We have their attack value. We also have their defense value. We also have their pursuit value. We have the encounter card information. If defeated, there's something down here at the bottom for you. And then it'll also show the items that you gain if you defeat that enemy. So that's kind of the general layout of these cards. If the fugitive decides to attack the person on the encounter card, or if the card has the keyword aggressive, or if it's a predatory animal, combat will occur. Combat is pretty straightforward. You will roll a d6. Oop. Here, let's do an example with a mad trapper. So you will roll a d6. I've rolled a 3. And add it to your attack value. One thing that I didn't mention is at the beginning of the game, each player is going to choose a character to play with. I think I actually did mention that specifically for the fugitive. So like I said at the beginning, there are 2 different characters you can choose. They have different abilities, different strengths. They also have different starting items. Let's just say this is a fight. We got this fight going on. So I have rolled a 3. I'm going to add that to my attack value, which unfortunately is 0. However, I have a knife. So the value is also going to be increased by any weapons that you have. So here I have +2 attack if it's a melee attack. And let's just say that this is, so that means I have 5 total. If the attack value with the die roll is greater than the defender's defense value, the defender will take the difference in damage to their HP. Combat is all done, like I mentioned, through the dice rolls, through the defense, continuing until somebody is defeated or has escaped. All right, it's time to talk about the fugitive actions. They have 6 actions that they can choose from: movement, rest, search, using and crafting items, attacking, and good deeds. A basic movement is simple. You just move to a new location on the map along any road, paying 1 energy per space, except in the winter when you're going to have to pay 2 energy per space because it's cold and people move slower in the winter. I know that I do. So, as an example, from this space, 106 to 104, that's going to cost 1 energy unless it's the winter, in which it will cost 2. You can continue to move so long as you have the energy to spend, so you can move more than once if you like. You cannot move into a space occupied by a government agent or a Red Army. If you move into a town, you must stop for that turn and announce that you are in a town. You don't have to say which town. You just have to say, hey, I'm in a town, and then the government will immediately draw a token from the Manhunt bag, which is this, okay? So I'm going to move from 139 to 168. That's going to cost me 1 energy. 168 into a town is going to cost me a 2nd energy, but then I have to stop and say, hey, I'm in a town. The government is going to draw from the Manhunt bag. If they draw a silent citizen, nothing happens. Nobody said a word. However, if they draw a loyal communist, they've been ratted out, and the fugitive must immediately declare their location. There are a few other types of movements, including water crossings, which will cost you 3 energy or 2 in the winter, because of course you're walking across ice, so it's a little bit easier. Hitchhiking is another type of movement the fugitive can do, but it can only be done along the highway, which you'll remember is this big red road. Okay? And it can also only be done when the hidden movement counter is at 5 or above, paying 2 energy to move directly to the next town on the highway. So let's just say I'm here, hidden movement track's at 5, that's perfect. I can go directly to this town, but remember, when you go to a town, you still have to stop and say, hey, I'm in a town. There's also bushwhacking, which costs 4 energy and allows the fugitive to travel across the empty space between roads to any location on a closed loop. So this right here, that's a closed loop. So I could go from 139 to 172 if I take the bushwhacking movement action. And lastly, you can sneak, paying 1 extra energy to move into a town. If sneaking, the government will draw 2 tokens from the bag, but if 1 is a silent citizen, then the fugitive will not need to reveal their locations. The next action is to rest, and the fugitive performs no other actions on their turn when they do this. If they're in a town, they will restore all energy, and if not, they will gain 2 energy instead of the basic 1. There are 2 types of search actions that can be taken as well. A wilderness search, where you spend 1 energy to draw 3 wilderness cards and put them into your campsite. It's probably a good time to mention any cards that you draw like this, they are going to go into your campsite board, which is right here. Okay, so you're going to put them pow, pow, pow. Now you can decide to keep any of these items so long as you have the space within your inventory. Your inventory is this board here. There are 4 spaces down here that are locked, which can become unlocked as the game continues. The second type of search is an urban search, which is done in a town, spending 1 energy to draw 1 urban card. Consider this breaking and entering. Next up, we have using and crafting items. To use items, you will need to spend the item's energy cost, which will be listed up here in the top corner. You will see these medicinal herbs take 1 energy to use. Just note that some items will have a detection check, and using these items may attract the attention of locals. When using these, you will need to roll a d6, and if the value is above the listed number, then no one heard you or saw you, but if it's below, then you've been spotted, and the government player will get to draw from the Manhunt bag. So you'll see these exclamation marks here, pow, 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 pow. That is the detection check. So for the rifle, obviously a rifle is going to be much louder than an old coat, which doesn't make pretty much any sound. Then you are going to have to roll. I rolled a 6, which is in fact higher than a 4. So nobody heard me. Shockingly, nobody heard me use my rifle. But if you were heard, like I said, the government player is going to draw from the manhunt bag. If they draw a loyal communist, you need to declare your position and reset the hidden movement track. Once again, we really don't want to do that. Crafting items can be done by combining items for your campsite and inventory to make something listed on the crafting list. So on the back of the Fugitives board, we have crafting. Okay, so it's saying, hey, to make a bow and arrow, you are going to need 4 short sticks, 1 large stick, 1 sinew, and 1 knife. Okay, so as you are collecting items, some of them are going to be able to be used to craft even better items, specifically something like fire, which is really helpful. Fire allows you to cook meat. It restores 1 energy at the end of your turn, because you'll remember if you get raw meat and you eat it, you get parasites. And that's just yucky. It's not a good thing to have, basically. Okay? You can also make winter clothes, a tent, some snowshoes, a satchel, and we also have here all of those crafted items. Next up, we have attack. For 1 energy, the fugitive can attack a government agent if they occupy the same location. Now, this can obviously only happen if the government pawn moves into the same space as the fugitive, because if you'll remember, the fugitive can't move into the government space. That is a no-go. If the government agent kills the fugitive, the government will win, but if the fugitive kills the agent, the government agents will respawn, and we'll talk about how they respawn and where when we talk about the government. Finally, we have good deeds. If in a town, the fugitive can spend 2 energy to help the locals and add a silent citizen token to the manhunt bag. This is how we get more of our silent people in this bag, so when the government pulls the tokens, we have more people on our side. The last step of the fugitive's turn is hidden movement. Each time they move, they will need to record their movement on their secret notepad, which is right here, so you can kind of track every space. You're just going to write the numbers of the locations or maybe the name of the town that you're in. And then they will record the number of moves they took on the hidden movement track, which is right here. This is really, really important because the fugitive can win by reaching the end of the hidden movement track. When the hidden movement tracker reaches 15, which is right here, it will stop. The government will gain 1 energy and the hidden movement counter will move to the box marked X, meaning the government has only 1 last chance to find the fugitive. That's the fugitive in a nutshell. Like I said, of course, this is not a full how to play, so there's going to be a little bit more that goes into maybe the combat and the crafting of the items and how you use the items and all of that stuff. Time to talk about the government. The government's turn is going to consist of 3 steps: recover energy, spend energy on actions, and replenish government assistant cards and adjust the seasons rondel. This is where the seasons are going to come into play. And just as an FYI, the government has 2 types of agents. They have KGB officers and Yakut. Once again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They will be able to do things slightly differently, which will be explained throughout the actions. Starting with recover energy, the maximum number of energy the government can have is equal to the number of agent pawns on the map. They will recover their energy up to their limit, but just know that it is capped at 5, and their energy is going to be tracked over here. The government has 3 different types of actions they can take: hunting the fugitive, Politburo, and special actions. Let's start with hunting the fugitive. For every 1 energy, you can move 1 government agent from 0 to 2 spaces, and they can then search at their end location. Okay, end location being the important thing there. KGB officers, which are represented by these red pawns, can only detect the trail of the last 4 locations that the fugitive has visited, which includes their current location. Well, the Yakut can determine the trail of the last 6 locations, and the Yakut are these black pawns here. Let's do a little example with this fella right here. So he's gonna go 1, 2 spaces, because he can go 0 to 2, and then he's going to search. He can search for the last 4 spaces so long that they are within range, basically. And let's just say that the fugitive was actually hanging out in 83. Well, they're searching. and they might be able to find something out. If the fugitive is at the search location, they will need to admit this and set the hidden movement tracker to 0. If the agent finds evidence within the detectable range, the fugitive will need to admit, I was there. If they did that and they're at 83 and they searched that little region area, they can say, I was there, without referencing how far they've traveled since. Each KBG officer can only move once per turn, while Yakets can move multiple times, but they can only declare a search on their final location. For 1 energy, a government can attack the fugitive if they occupy the same location. Now, the government agent doesn't necessarily need to know for sure that the fugitive is in that space. They simply declare the attack. If the fugitive isn't there, then nothing happens. But if they are, you will perform a combat, continuing to roll until one player is either defeated or the fugitive escapes. Remember, if the fugitive is killed, the government wins. That being said, this little dude right here could say, I'm attacking you, because they've gathered enough information and they think they might be in the same space as the fugitive, okay? If the fugitive is there, they have to say, yep, here I am, let's fight. Otherwise, the fugitive will say, I'm not there. And that's also giving the government a little bit of information. If the government is defeated, if there is a fight, the KGB officers will respawn in Kansk. Hopefully I said that right, which is right up here at the top, unless the battle or the fight happened there, in which case they are going to respawn here. Now the UCAT will respond in the town where they were recruited from. If 2 government agents are in the same location, they can capture the fugitive by paying 1 energy and declaring a capture. If the fugitive is in that same location, they're captured and the government wins. So remember, the government can win by either capturing or killing. So if you happen to have 2 in the same spot, instead of killing, you can do a capture. If you're like, well, why would I want to capture versus kill? If you're just capturing, because there's 2 of you, you just get to capture. You don't have to do a combat. So obviously attacking is a little bit more risky. You could do the capture once again, even if you don't know that the fugitive is for sure in that space. But if they're there, they get captured. Otherwise, nothing happens and you go about your day. Finally, you can interrogate a local. So for 3 energy plus 1 energy for every previously successfully interrogated local, which can be tracked here on your reference sheet, you will simply draw a token from the manhunt bag. If it's a loyal communist, the fugitive must reveal a location within their last 3 locations. The hidden movement counter will then move to 3. Then 1 silent citizen is added to the bag. If the token that is drawn is a silent citizen, well, nothing happens because they're not saying anything. But you will add a loyal communist to the bag. So either way, somebody's getting added to the bag. The next action the government player can do is a polyburo. The government player may purchase a card from the government assistance board, paying the associated energy cost. This over here, POW, Government Assistant Board. The associated cost is listed off to the side. So the bottom row costs 1 energy, middle will cost 2, and the top row will cost 3. Most of these cards are beneficial, and some are even essential to winning the game. Purchase cards are placed in one of these 3 locations on the extension board. We have Reserve, Discard, and Temporarily Active. Just so everybody knows, temporarily active is for something that has an ongoing ability that is currently active. Discard is self-explanatory. And reserve, there's actually, right on the bottom it says, instead of activating a purchase card, it may be placed in the reserve. Only 1 card may be held in the reserve at this time. Pay 2 costs to activate this card. So if you find something you're like, oh, that's going to be really good, but I don't need that right now, that's what that spot's for. You can also upgrade an agent by recruiting a Yaket tracker, spending 4 energy and replacing a KGB pawn with a Yaket pawn. So let's just say we did this. We're like, nah, we want him out. And if you're wondering how, there is a recruit card. There's actually 6 of these recruit cards that are put throughout this deck. How you build the deck at the beginning of the game is you essentially draw out 5 cards for each of these 6 locations. Then you add a recruit card, shuffle them, put them together kind of like 6 at a time. So that means that the recruit cards are going to be coming up a little bit kind of like scattered, but relatively frequently throughout the game. Now we also have the Red Army, which I've mentioned these tokens before. The government can place a single Red Army token at a location on the map. Once a Red Army token is placed, it remains at that location for the rest of the game. These locations are now permanently blocked to the fugitive. Only one can be placed per turn, and there are only 5 available, so you need to use them very wisely. This is kind of your way to block off the fugitive from getting to where they need to go. And where you determine to put those, you're going to kind of figure that out as the game goes on based on the locations and information that you are getting from the fugitive. You can kind of start to see maybe the path that they are taking that you want to cut them off from. If not adjacent to another Red Army, it's going to cost 3 energy. This is known as a deployment. However, if they are adjacent, it's only going to cost 1. Maybe you're starting to build a wall. Who knows? This is called a maneuver. I will mention you cannot place a Red Army in the fugitive space. If an attempt occurs, the fugitive will announce their location and will reset the hidden movement tracker to 0. It's also important to know that Red Armies can never be placed into red or green locations, which you'll remember is that side of the board. We also have a special action available called Drive and Search, which one of the KGB officers can perform. If a KGB officer is on the highway, they can spend 1 energy to travel to the next town. This is very similar to how the fugitive can hitchhike. So they're just driving along the highway. Only one of them. The last step in the government's turn is to replenish the government assistant cards and adjust the season. So the government assistant cards are going to go down. You can see that with the arrows, lots of arrows pointing down. And then to adjust the season tracker. To do this, you will move the season counter 1 space clockwise around the season's rondel, which is divided into 2 seasons, winter and summer, and 4 quarters. Throughout the year, the fugitive must eat 1 meal per quarter in order to avoid starvation. We kind of mentioned that earlier, but it's just really, really important. In addition, they must also wear warm clothes or have a fire in the winter. Otherwise, they are going to lose 1 HP each quarter. Now, this is really important to know that only the government agents and the Red Army can kill the fugitive. If they reach 0 HP any other way through starvation or freezing to death or all of these different things, hypothermia, they are just considered severely wounded. If this happens, their body is found by locals, it's taken to the nearest town, and then once they're in the town, the government player will draw, you guessed it, from the manhunt bag, and the locals will steal 1 item from the fugitive's inventory chosen by the government player. So they can only die at the hands of the government, not by the elements. And basically, that's how the game works in a nutshell. Like I said, once again, in a nutshell, because there is so much more and so many more nuances that are involved in this game. It's also really helpful that you do have your reference sheets. The reference sheets are going to have all of your actions listed here, the description and the cost. It's a really, really useful kind of reference guide here. And on the back, we have our crafting on the fugitive. Same goes for the government action guide, all of your actions, descriptions, and cost. It is a serious kind of one-to-one, head-to-head brain puzzle, basically. So the question is, who is this game for? This is a game for people who enjoy hidden movement, war games, history, and challenging, stressful games. I think hidden movement is the mechanic that is probably the most exhilarating of all the mechanics out there in the whole wide world. Trying to sneak around and not get caught and trying to find your mouse in the hunt. It's just a lot of strategy that goes into this game. Not only are you having to plan out your turn, but you have to be very mindful about what the other player is doing. So as a fugitive, you've got a lot to worry about. Not only do you have to be really sneaky and try and outsmart them by taking maybe a really weird path, but you also have to make sure that you don't starve, that you don't freeze to death, that you don't, get eaten by a bear. You have to make good decisions when you reach these encounters, like, am I going to try and sneak away? Am I going to try and fight? Like, what are you going to do there? And you have to keep an eye on all the agents that will be getting recruited onto the board. So though there's only one to start, there's a total of 5 KGB agents and 2 of the Yakut agents as well. So and not to mention the Red Army, so they're going to also be spreading around. Stressful, all while managing your energy. So you can each of you only have a maximum of 5 energy to use, and you have to use that wisely and plan out your turn kind of ahead, maybe while the other person is taking theirs. You have to strategically place your agents. It's really important for the government player. Blocking off these areas with the Red Army can really mess with the Fugitive. The rulebook does also include some history that you can read through, which really sets the mood and, maybe puts you in the mindset for playing this game. And with that being said, understand that this game does deal with war, sensitive topics, and some people are more comfortable with this type of game and theme. Jeff and I personally, we love war games, but I do obviously want to flag that because I know it's not for everyone, considering that the government's goal is to either kill or capture the fugitive. But if you're up for a good strategic game of cat and mouse, this could be a really great fit for you. Jeff and I are really excited to kind of continue playing this game. We plan to bring it to Circle DC with us and everything because I think a lot of our wargaming friends are really going to enjoy it. But this isn't the same kind of like war game as you might think of, like something like Cuba Libre as an example. It plays in around 90 minutes, so it's not like taking up like 5 hours of play either. So it's really, really manageable. And honestly, the rules are pretty straightforward. And you have great reference guides. Now, if that sounds like something that piques your interest, maybe it's something that you might be interested in. Like I mentioned before, the links and everything you need to know are going to be in the description below. The Kickstarter is coming on February 11th, but you can follow the campaign now so you get notified when it launches. And there's going to be so many more details and all those things within the Kickstarter page. But as per usual, as we always say, make sure that you watch all the stuff, you read the rule book, you do the things to make an informed buying decision to make sure this is a right fit for you. But that's everything that I have for you today. Now, if you're interested in buying board games, remember, Siberian Manhunt, we are going to go to Kickstarter. Other games that are currently out, you can go to your friendly local gaming store. And for us, that's the Boardroom Game Cafe. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. And now I say goodbye. Goodbye. That's not very good for the fugitive, I'll tell you that much. Backpack, backpack. Examples. 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 Why would they want to do that? That would be silly.